Hello. It's about time we do this again, isn't it? I know I've been gone for a long time, but I'm back. And with today, a new way to structure these lessons comes. From now on, this is more of a course than a class. This might be confusing to some of you, especially if you're not one of those people who was participating in making the assignment. But this was initially made as a class for people to participate in, and we've each subsequent critique, our class or collective of artists who learn gets better and better, and when we get good enough, we move on to the next topic. Or at least that was the way this was conceived. However, not enough things were submitted. This time we have a whole total of 0 submissions overall, which means we get a cool little bonus, and that is we get to do whatever the fuck we want. And what I want to do, when we don't really need to focus on having this be a class, is make this into a much more informative thing for everyone who watches this as a video. And thus, from now on, this will be structured as a course, not a class. Which you might be confused to what that means. And, of course, that's why I'm here, I'll tell you. A course, as opposed to a class, means that from now on, every single drawing we make, every single drawing we do, and every single lecture and video we do will not be having any critiques, but it will instead be a lecture given by me that assumes you've already gained sufficient knowledge to move on to it. In other words, it allows you to watch the other videos multiple times if you are unsure of if you are good enough to move on. You can just watch them multiple times and focus on the things that are discussed there. So I will not be repeating the concepts that I've already discussed, like flow and gesture, unless I find it necessary for the lecture, but I will be assuming that you are already familiar with them if you're on the next video of the course. This does not mean that we will be going and beginning from the start. We will still be fairly advanced in this way. We will not be, starting from scratch, but we will be somewhat, I would say, repeating the concepts that we did in order for this to be a more comprehensive lecture. We will be then moving on to stuff like structure and different structural concepts, how to combine gesture with structure, which are things I would otherwise move on to much later. But since there's no students that need to, I guess, I don't actually know how to put that. Just there's no students here, so we don't really need to bother with waiting for everyone to be, already familiar with one concept. We can just move on to another one. And I'm going to be assuming that you, when you move on to another lecture, you will already be familiar and good enough at the things practiced in the previous lecture. This is tea from Taiwan, by the way. It is not bad. I do prefer Chinese tea by quite a bit, but it isn't bad. It's a black tea, as you can see. I'm making it a bit strong because I think these teas are generally quite weak compared to the Chinese ones. It kind of tastes like some of the wild trees I've had from China, if you know what that is. I would generally say it's a mix kind of between that, and it does kind of taste like Indian tea, honestly. Not very much like China. I don't mind it, it still tastes pretty good. You might have noticed my tea set has gotten a bit of an upgrade. That is because I've been to a shop with a nice Chinese lady who sells ceramics and other tea gear, teaware for a pretty cheap price, and I've bought a lot of it. This is from Lidl, which sounds odd, but it is cool. Trust me. Anyways, we will be starting this lecture, as we've started a lot of the other ones, by just doing the assignments ourselves. And I will be trying to, this time, thoroughly guide you through the process. And this will be the last time we look at gesture as gesture itself. After this, we will be trying to do not only gesture, but also incorporate structure into our gesture lessons, and trying to combine gesture and structure in a way in which they build up on each other. We'll start with simple structure and move on to more complex structure as time goes on. Alright, sorry for that. I want to move with this little man here in the corner. Okay, so, to put it simply, it's been quite a while, I know, and I hope you will enjoy these lectures, even if you're watching them much after they were recorded, because now they are somewhat timeless. And I still hope you are here for the journey with me to enjoy it. So I'm going to be drawing. Normally, I would be drawing with these. I found them quite nice. These are Progresso pencils from Kohinoor. However, I have also found that these pencils are not quite good on camera. They aren't very visible. So instead, we will be using this, which is a pit charcoal graphite pen, or not graphite, just charcoal actually. It's a charcoal pen. I've sharpened it with a knife, so it should be fairly sharp. It's an H. I do recommend using softer stuff than charcoal, as it isn't the best for this method. It is easy to capture on camera, however, so we will be sticking to using it. Alright, I'll take one last sip of my tea and then we'll move on to the lecture. Why don't we? This course is still ongoing by the time you start watching the lectures. You may also request music if you want, or further clarifications on things you're struggling with. As long as you word the questions well enough, I will gladly answer them. That is, if anyone's watching this, which I don't think many people are at the moment. And of course, if you're watching it when the series actually still is ongoing. Alright, let's move on to drawing. So this pose, I would say out of the three that I had as assignments, there's 3 poses, is one of the more difficult ones. So we will be trying to make our way through it in a, in a quick and easy way. So you might notice that the back has a sort of C shape going on there, and I think that's a sort of central theme. I think the shoulders, so we'll start with the shoulders here. Yeah, you see my mark making, right? I may need to get the camera to be a bit closer. However, that is a not easy thing to do, so if everything collapses, it is my fault for trying to make this viewing experience nicer for you guys, but a very necessary one, I'm sorry. It's a good attempt. This might be ever so slightly better. Hello. It's a bit tilted, but okay. So, let's start. So I see a lot of weight on these shoulders. I'm not sure if you do too, but I think there's a lot of weight behind them. So I would start with that. I would start with the sort of weight that is around here and kind of spin it and move from it into the rest of the body, right? So this is that part. This part, right? This. Right there. On the camera. And from this, I think you kind of move on to the more broad things. So the back's doing something like this, where it's curving forward, and then I would say maybe it kind of arches, it kind of spins around here, right? This would be the arm. This would be the arm. And it spins around here, and it kind of lets the pelvis go outside of it, and the pelvis immediately curves into a leg. So let's go from this into the pelvis and into a leg immediately. Something like this. From which immediately another leg takes shape. So if we continue the pelvis here, we can kind of get the other leg going as well. And you know, already we have a sort of decent base to start the figure. I know this might be a little bit too abstract, and I understand, so we will try to make wrapping lines to kind of convey it. So now you're kind of noticing what this is, what leg this represents, right? That's the beauty of wrapping lines. They kind of convey the perspective. So the knee would be about here, and after which it would split into this. This leg, on the other hand, would be like this. Now I do think here we can continue this movement into the head, the movement of the torso. Into the head. I'm gonna make the leg a bit clearer. I don't think it's conveyed well enough. And here it would cut it off, right? Yeah, like that. Okay. Now, the head, right. So I think the head is mostly like this, and then it starts kind of looking up, and it goes down again. So we started from a very, like a forceful thing. We looked at where I think the crux of the position is, and we kind of build off from that into these, like, intricate, I would say, like, kind of a mess of lines, right? So now we have one of the arms here, and let's look where that arm goes. It doesn't really tell us. It goes kind of like straight. So when we don't have a way to illustrate that, we can just do a few wrapping lines there, kind of convey that it's going somewhere. The other arm, however, kind of continues in this motion, goes a little bit more down even. And again, kind of curves forward, right? So we will have to convey that with wrapping lines, because perspective doesn't really let us convey itself. There's the fist here, elbow here. And now I'm incorporating into a tiny bit of structure just to let us sort of be clearer as to what is happening. So it's not as vague, right? Because that's an issue you might run into when you're doing this. Like sometimes it is very vague as to what's happening. So the head, this is what represents the head for us. Slow shape. Let's look where he's looking. So we can, honestly, I think this is basically the gesture done, right? We already have a guy kind of doing this sort of pose, but let's develop it a tiny bit more into, for instance, I think this head might have to be a little bit more clear, so let's do the kind of face that's there. Not the entire face, nothing like that, just kind of the very basic notions of it, right? So the chin, the beard, you know, and around here there would be the ear. We're just kind of gesturing or kind of hinting at a face. I'm not drawing it, right? Just doing the very basic kind of outlines you might want to do if you were doing a face. Just for the sake of like conveying that this is where the face is going to be if we were to develop it further, which we won't, obviously. But we will be doing something like that in future lectures. And the beard would be like this. Just a little bit of a hint on what's happening, right? Nothing too huge. Now you might wanna, I think this section especially is a little bit confused. Or not confused, like it isn't incorrect or anything, but it isn't very clear as to what's happening there. So you might want to make it easier on yourself and sort of start drawing some of the anatomy just to kind of gesture to yourself what's there, right? So, for instance, this would be where the deltoid kind of splits off into the torso, and this is where and you can kind of even base it off of observation here, if you know what's happening, is that here would be the breasts. We can do that. Just a little hint. And the stomach is not really, it's twisting just a tiny bit, not a lot. into sort of here where there's his belly button. Now for the belly button, you already know what happens. There's the pelvis. And we can even separate this, which is the rib cage, with the start here and the start of the pelvis. And this just should make it a little bit clearer as to what's happening, and hopefully let us guide the rest of the drawing better if we were to finish it, which we aren't. So yeah, that's gesture 1. I think this, out of all the ones that I submitted, or not submitted, that I had for assignments, was the hardest. If you wanted to push this one, I think you could, which I didn't do here because, I don't know, I just didn't think of it. You could push the perspective, so I did that a little bit with this arm, but I didn't do it with this leg. If you wanted to push it a lot, you could have done it with both, into something like making this arm a lot bigger, like that, making this leg go a lot more forward, and then a lot more back, like that, right? So those were things you could do if you wanted to push this pose. We can talk about pushing poses in the future. I think that's a really interesting topic to get into. I didn't really get into it here, and honestly I didn't think in that aspect about this, but we could do that if enough people would want to try to push very dynamic drawings. We could get into it. I think this method generally allows us to have very dynamic drawings by default, but there is definitely ways we can sort of play with it and adapt it to push it even more. Just for the sake of more clarity, I'm gonna really quickly just sketch in these things, the sort of underwear he has on. And yeah, I don't think you need to sketch much more here to make it clear. I think this is pretty. It's conveyed well enough, I would say. Alright, that was drawing 1. And I'll be trying to make insightful commentary on the second one as well. I think the second one is a bit easier. So let's switch to it now. First I'm going to zoom in for you guys. I guess like this. Best I can do. Alright. This one I think might be a little bit easier. I'm gonna again drink some tea. Heck, while I'm on it, I'm gonna make some tea. Sorry for that. Let's not draw on wet paper. Alright. Let's get to it, why don't we? Again, same pencil, charcoal. What do I see here? What is the central motif? I am unsure. I kind of see 2 of them. I would say one of the main rhythms here is the sort of stretching, right? He is obviously doing some kind of... Okay, this paper is kind of annoying me. He's obviously doing some kind of stretching. So let's start with that, honestly. Let's start with a big C curve. Starting from this, which is the end of his arm, he's kind of putting down there, into all the way down. And now it kind of is the issue. Do I want to curve it completely into his leg? Or do I want to... I'm gonna not decide there. I'm gonna curve it into his torso. Or, I mean, sorry, pelvis. I'm gonna curve it into his pelvis. And we will leave that one undecided and draw the legs separately. But you could probably do both here, curve it into the leg. I'm gonna just go with the conservative option, I guess, in this case. Okay, now normally you would try to determine which is the weight-bearing leg, which leg you're gonna put more emphasis on. So I definitely think the forward leg is weight-bearing, so we're gonna continue this sort of rhythm of the leg forward and just kind of bounce off of it. Into the slope here, which is somewhere around here, right? And then again, we can continue this, get into the second leg. Right, and we've already got something going on. I do think some of these are a bit long, like here. Should definitely be shorter. But we've already got like semblance of a figure. So let's develop it, right? This is very unclear, very abstract. So first off, let's do some wrapping lines here to kind of convey where the torso is going. And let's define the second hand immediately. That's what it's doing. I think it's going back and then kind of shifting forward, something like this. Can draw a little square for the hands and do a little wrapping line here to kind of convey that. It's wrapping over this, so we want to convey that too, obviously. Then I think the head might not be stupid. Right, he's reaching down his head, so maybe something like this. Head here is a little bit difficult, but no, I think I have it. Okay. Let's do something like this. Square head. You can start from a circle here as well, like this. Kind of looking down, right? Let's cut it off. Something like that. Though his head is a bit smaller, not really an issue. Okay, I'm gonna clean it up a little bit. Right, that's the head. One thing I would say, now that we can notice, is that the leg might not be pushed enough, and generally the gesture could, I think, be pushed a bit more, but let's just try stick with this and see where it goes. So now we see the rest of the torso kind of is stretching over his head, right? So we do this, which means it kind of goes from the back here, and stretches over, and this immediately into the arm, which then, you know, goes forward like that, like this, and here he's kind of doing a stretch motion, right? So you kind of have that conveyed. Good on us. Now, what I would say is a couple of issues with this is the legs. I'm not quite confident in what the legs are doing, right? This leg, I think we will need to define the pelvis better in order for this leg to work. So we define the pelvis that it starts here. The leg should be starting around here. Gonna come forward, and we're gonna push it, curve it. Now we of course need to do wrapping line from half the pelvis and here. Alright, I think that does look better. If we finish the rest of the geometrical shape here, and he's doing it wrong. Right. Then this leg is kind of in a form of stretching, which we did kind of convey here. Of course, this ultimately would have to be kind of cut. So, you know, this, the rib cage kind of goes here into the pelvis like that. So it'll be much more like this. You know, we can hint at some anatomical remarks, like the belly button here. Again, this is kind of nearing on a structure a little bit, but it isn't wrong to try and get some structure in your gesture to kind of help you with it. If you're unsure of what the person is doing, kind of. So you're definitely allowed to do that, though it isn't the best, but it isn't unallowed. And plus, I'm trying to incorporate some structure into our lessons very soon, so this is a sort of preparation for you, I guess, to get familiar with some ways of doing structure. Okay. So now that we've kind of conveyed a lot of the things here, we could do a wrapping line here to convey the perspective on the leg. I think this is going to be very important. You can also split these into cubes and do one plane, second plane, if you don't want to do circles. This is good, especially if the leg is very rigid. So let's do that here, because I think this is actually a pretty good example of it. And split it in half, and as you know, his leg is kind of stretching his on his leg. Like here, kind of not the best. Okay, let's try to get that leg to be better. It's a 3/4 leg, so that was the mistake I did there. And yeah, this is much better. Right, not a 3/4 leg anymore. You can even split this plane to make a knee. For some structural help. Though then you kind of realize that this be more forward, I believe, the knee around here. And yeah, this is basically the gesture, I would say. I think the leg here might be a bit too large. And the perspective is definitely a little bit confused. But I think it functions well enough for it to pass, right? So let's move on to next one. You might want to make this, the leg here, a little bit more clear that it's a leg, right? And then there's these guys. Anyways. Gesture number 3 it is. I'm gonna, again, have some tea. This is just a second flush, or second brew. Flush is strange to say, actually. This is a second kind of imbuing of the tea. You can see here. The leaves aren't unwinded that much yet, so I'm doing very short brew times, because it's usually more concentrated at the start. It's not a bad tea. Alright. Picture number 3. It's a little woman. She's oops. I hope you're seeing that well enough. And she's you know, there's a robe. She's doing a little pose. I like it. I like what she's doing. I think it's cool. I'm gonna have some more tea actually. It's growing on me. It's growing on me. I didn't initially like it as much. It's very flowery. Flowerful. Okay, I'm gonna remove the paper clip because we know what happened last time I recorded. Water. Alright, just do it here. I hope you're enjoying the T sections of our lectures because they're not going away. And they're definitely here to stay, so because it helps me, and maybe in some way it might help you too. That's not really the main concern. It's here just so we can relax and sort of unwind as we deal with this. Figure drawing isn't supposed to be stressful. It's a very relaxing process. I know a lot of people might be doing their figure drawings very quickly, but we aren't here to do that. We're here to enjoy our time and do it as fast as we want to and as we can, right? But not necessarily too fast so we are uncomfortable. The main thing here is to enjoy it and to get a good drawing at the end. If you hurry it up too much so that you won't have a good drawing, then there's no point in doing it in the first place, right? You won't learn anything by making 20 bad drawings instead of one good one. So, all that said, let us actually, continue on with this wonderful lady who is holding her wonderful pose, a wonderful, I think it's a chain. Let's try and crack this pose up. So, to be entirely honest with you, I do see some sort of flow and rhythm lines, but I don't really know if they are that easy to draw. So we might want to start with the head here. So let's do that. Starting with the head is not unusual at all, especially if it's harder for you to find some of the rhythms that I found here. So there's nothing wrong with starting with the head. Here I'm not doing like a method, not quite. I would say this is mostly the Loomis method with some additional rendering added to it. I like the head to see it more as a sort of square combined with a circle, so that kind of helps me with the flow. It's more of a personal thing. Alright, now we've got the head. Let's move on to the rest of the body, right? So we can start from the neck. I see the neck as like a connecting shape, kind of, between the head and the rest of the body. So I'll just draw it here, kind of go from that. You can kind of go from that, get the rhythm of the neck into the arm, maybe. So start with this, and kind of, the arm's kind of doing this. And the second one, same thing, I would say. You're kind of connected with line here, and that's how we get the arms. Now to the rest of the body. I think here we can kind of define this little thing. We can kind of stretch it into the rest. So this would be what's called torso line, I guess. We can also do the neck. So this is the rib cage. We're kind of sliding alongside the rib cage. We can do this. This is the rest of the spine, so we're kind of following the spine here into the pelvis. We kind of get this, right? We kind of split this with a circle, a grabbing line. We can do the same here to gain planes. You can already kind of see how this is actually the pelvis. So we can cut it. And this is how we get the planes of the body, right? That way, something like this. You even look at the drawing, kind of observation here, but you don't necessarily need to. It kind of just goes along. You get these like somewhat shaded parts. This, by the way, is not the final, it's a simplification. Right, because it's the gesture. The belly button would be around here. You can see that the figure there. Oh okay, nothing broke. It's all good. You can kind of see that the figure here. I'm gonna make it bigger for you guys, just a little bit. Actually doesn't have a visible belly button, or very slightly. There's a sort of hint at the shade around here, but luckily we don't really need to bother with that because we do know the anatomy and we know where the belly button would roughly be, so that's not really an issue for us because we're cool and stuff. I'm gonna cover the TV, I guess. I don't really know how to. Yeah. It's good. Probably. Okay. Let's resume. So, now from this, we know that at the start of the pelvis, you can kind of start drawing the two legs. So we'll draw one, and we'll draw the second. So the first one, I would say, is the one that bears most of the weight, so we'll draw it first. Here you can measure it. We know that this should be as much as this. This is more of a way to check if it's correct, not really. And we do in fact have it correct. So, let's go. Initially didn't S-curve here for the leg, but I think I'm gonna actually lean into more of this. And the leg itself is more of a 3/4 leg. This is like this. Oh, it is smaller. Again, I'm trying to make this with a charcoal. It doesn't really allow for that much sketching. It's kind of a disadvantage, but it is also able to be captured on camera, so I will be using it, and I am using it for that reason. Okay, let's do the leg like this. I'm pretty happy with that. Second leg, we can just kind of hint at it, honestly. We don't really need to bother with it that much. You might notice we're not sure where these legs overlap and where they don't, so that's kind of a bad thing, so let's actually define that, right? Since I started with the planes here, we can continue the planes. It would mean that this leg plane kind of goes into here, and then it obviously separates around the tipping, around the knee, like that. Can render the rest of it. Just like lines, just like this. Of course, do the outline too. Sometimes you might miss your mark. Quite accurate, so I want this to be here, and that can be real shitty, especially if you have something like charcoal that isn't too easy to erase. Anyway, I don't even want to erase it, I just want to make it less obnoxiously dark compared to the rest of the drawing, and I think I have managed that, so good. Right, let's resume with the rest. And here I kind of underestimated how forward it's going, so this is really fine, but let's also add the excuse me, this is again a technique you might want to use with structure, like very rudimentary rendering. You can continue this honestly until here. And here. And you might want to define the rests here, which might be a little bit more difficult. They start around here, gonna go down, same around here, and they go down with the rhythms of the body. Though they are on the front side, so I'm just gonna it's more like this. And the shade obviously goes around it. I'm not sure what the rest's there. I'm not quite happy with how it turned out actually. See, that's the disadvantage of kind of sketching and immediately sort of solidifying what you're doing, solidifying the sketches. It's like you don't get that much time and space to experiment. And what we're trying to do here, a lot of experimentation, a lot of playing with the bows. Kind of unhappy with that not happening as much. That's probably good enough though. I mean, it's not perfect at all. I think I go to the perspective would be different here. It's okay. Let's go back to the web page. I'm gonna forget that one. But of course now, unfortunately, it's gonna be so obviously that's just a difference. Yeah. I kind of forget that I need to add in a random thumbnail, which I can't do here for some reason. I kind of led me to sabotage myself. Now it looks better, I think. Okay. And yeah, that's it. I hope you enjoyed these additional figure drawing lecture. This one was focused on gesture, of course, again. Next time we'll be focusing on how to get from rudimentary gesture to rudimentary structure. A lot of the things that I'm doing here are already rudimentary structure, so you're kind of having an interlude for that. However, I do think that from this point on, it will be even more visible what I'm doing. So we'll be talking about major masses, how to do balance poses, how to do major masses, and figure out the balance in a pose. Then we will be talking about what the major masses are and how we can break them down and how we can connect them. And after that, we will be sort of trying to apply what we've learned to these guys, to the gestures and people. And after that, we will be, again, sort of drawing what I'm doing here, which is splitting people into planes, stuff like that. And yeah, it'll be a lot of fun. We'll be doing a lot of more structural things, geometrical shapes and stuff. However, they don't have to be geometrical. We'll be talking about how to do mostly the rib cage, so that's one major mass. The head, second major mass. We'll be talking about how to draw the head, just about the head in general, and the pelvis. The three major masses, and we'll be talking about them, how they appear in a figure. Then we'll be talking about arms and stuff, and yeah, it will be a lot of fun. I hope you'll all be joining me here next time who are watching, and I wish you all a good day and or night and or whatever you have. With the last sip of tea, I am here to wish you all goodbye.